The year is 1997, the inauguration of the FIA GT Championship. With the goal of hosting the fastest GT cars in the world, it would mostly be concentrated in Europe, but would dabble in Asia and North America toward the end of the season. This prestigious series would host only the highest tier of European race cars, all of which would go on to be legends in their own right. Unfortunately, America wanted in too. Time to disturb the peace. And by the way, they'd use a V8 built by a NASCAR team. This and more on Obnoxious Race Cars. Don Panos was a visionary for many reasons. Entrepreneur and founder of 2 pharmaceutical companies, he was also the brainchild of the American Le Mans series, which paved the way for endurance racing in America. Most notably, he would give substantial backing to his son's startup sports car outfit, Panos. The relatively small manufacturer was then able to partner with motorsport giant Reynard to develop the GTR-1. The Esperante GTR-1, a mere silhouette of the original road-going version, was potentially the most brutal GT1 car in history. Under the hood sat a 6-liter Ford V8 courtesy of NASCAR giant Roush Racing. Its front mid-engine design set it apart from most of its competition. 2 road-going versions were built to meet the homologation requirements of the FIA. Only one exists today, but Panos will build a replica for you if you can fork up the cash. Being outpaced by the CLK GTR, it managed a best of 5th in the '98 championship. However, Panos enjoyed much more success in North America, winning both the IMSA and USRRC GT championships that year. As GT cars became less and less GT-like, Panos realized they'd have no chance in the category anymore. The GT1 category was nuked by the FIA and USRRC anyway, leaving Panos to either withdraw or adapt. Let's hope they make the responsible decision. This is the Panos LMP1 Roadster S, their march into the already competitive prototype class. The Roadster S would maintain many cues from its predecessor. It ran a 6.0-liter V8 and continued to contract Reynard for most of its design. It even shared the same chassis as the Esperante, according to the man himself. It would go through many design iterations, including the pretty miserable LMP07, before returning to form with the LMP1 Evo. Its front engine layout meant that the majority of its weight was biased toward the front. The large front splitter meant that high levels of downforce could be generated and applied to its very wide front tires. The front engine configuration also pushed the driver back nearly in line with the rear axle's center line. The benefit of this is that the driver is better positioned from a car feedback standpoint. Remember that it's still a rear-wheel drive machine. The same idea applies to why Lewis Hamilton was upset at the seating position of his W14. Notice how Lewis is further away from the rear wheels than the other top competitors. While marginal, it can make a difference. And as it turned out, turning toward the prototype category would be a very smart move. The LMP1 Roadster S would go on to win at Mosport, Portland, and at the Petit Le Mans. To top it off, it stole the 1999 ALMS Championship by 2 points over BMW. Winning not just on home soil, Panos would also see victory at the 1,000 kilometers of Nürburgring in 2000. Finally, it would see a handful more wins and podiums until 2003 when it was retired. We need to appreciate this success, given its unconventional design. The last front-engine prototype to ever compete was this unenviable thing back in 2015. Meanwhile, the last front-engine car to outright win Le Mans was the Ferrari 330 62 years ago. It's probably sufficient to say that the LMP1 Roadster was the only remotely successful front-engine prototype in the last 60 years. Here's to Panos for doing it their way, and shaking the very earth while doing so. Speaking of doing it their way, there's no better example of it than Garage 56. The very premise of the single, reserved Le Mans exhibition slot gives teams the opportunity to compete in the 24-hour race with far less regulations. Here, innovation is the meta. Just be sure your entry won't give the top class a run for its money. Garage 56 is not allowed to run competitively, but it does give us race fans a lens into what's possible and how these possibilities fare against tried and true methods. Last year's Garage 56 was the most obnoxious. The Garage 56 Chevrolet Camaro was a NASCAR Cup car modified to compete in the 24 hours of Le Mans. It completed 2,413 miles and finished 39th overall, had it been classified. For more than 20 hours, the entry ran near the top of the GT field before a driveline issue sidelined the team for about an hour. There were a number of modifications: headlights, taillights, a larger fuel cell, now more toward the center of the car, carbon brake discs, and custom Goodyear Eagle race tires that were designed specifically for the race. A paddle shifter replaced the manual sequential gearbox, and engineers also managed to shave 225 kilograms from the Cup car so that the extra weight wouldn't destroy the tires. Despite these differences, there were honest measures taken to conserve its stock car DNA. For one, it based its 5.9-liter pushrod V8 off of the standard Cup car. The last time a pushrod had been run at Le Mans was about 15 years ago. In addition, a rear wing was considered, but the traditional Cup car spoiler won out, just for the sake of preserving its roots. Naysayers might ask what all the excitement was about. It's just a modified Cup car with extra aero. Well, firstly, that's false, as the car had a functioning radar system that detected nearby traffic and displayed it to the driver. But I also challenge any deniers to look at the big picture here. NASCAR has been declining in popularity for a while, and despite its close racing, it still holds the perspective as a yeehaw sport abroad. I may be generalizing here, but you know exactly what I mean. Garage 56 was an exercise for NASCAR's public image to showcase not just its ability around a circuit, but reliability and team coordination. Up for the task, NASCAR would gather their best talent. Hendrick Racing, former team of Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, hold 18 drivers' championships in total. Out of these 18, Jimmy Johnson has 7.
Wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship!
Further, the showcase was a lens into what NASCAR's generation could be. Along the way, engineers found tangible ways to actually improve the current Cup car. So, if circuit racing, downforce, and headlights become a mainstay within the next decade, we should have zero doubt of where it all started. Downforce is an important phenomenon to consider when engineering a race car. Teams will invest large sums of cash into aerodynamic research, wind tunnel testing, CFD, and on-track sensors. Chief aerodynamicists are shuffled around Formula One like prized possessions, and the most talented ones are often under multi-year contracts. Put simply, downforce is the opposite of lift. Downforce increases the vertical downward force on a car's tires, and therefore cornering speed. However, downforce has limitations. The amount of downforce a car produces is proportional to its speed, leaving cars only producing a fraction of their maximum downforce in low-speed corners, leaving valuable seconds on the table. Aerodynamic elements also increase drag, which, in turn, will lower your top-end speed. These limitations, however, meant nothing to Jim Hall and Hap Sharp, who engineered a wild solution 50 years ago. The 2J was a Group 7 Can-Am race car with a twist. Because Can-Am cars had far less regulations than anything today, this allowed engineers the absolute freedom to be obnoxious and innovative. The wheels were powered by a small block V8, but there also was a 2-cylinder auxiliary engine powering the giant fans that sucked air from the bottom of a car like a vacuum and expelled it through the rear. Instead of relying on airflow through wings and splitters, why not just suck the car to the ground? As a result, downforce levels can be constant, through any corner, at any time. These fans were so powerful, they drowned out the sound of the engine. Complementing the fans were side skirts around 3/4 of the car. These skirts moved with the suspension of the car to maintain that the bottom was at constant alignment to the ground at all times, thereby maximizing the vacuum potential. Adding to its uniqueness, it had a 3-speed automatic gearbox and only weighed a smidge over 815 pounds, which is about as light as a Yugo. The 2J only competed for one season in 1970, and while quite unreliable, its pace was undeniable. Sir Jackie Stewart took the reins for its inaugural outing at Watkins Glen and qualified in 3rd while praising its cornering ability. Then, driver Vic Elford would take over for the last 4 races. He would qualify first at Laguna Seca and break McLaren's lap record the very next day, despite never driving the track before. Unfortunately, they were met with yet another retirement after a failing connecting rod. In the last race of the season, Elford would again qualify the car in first, this time retiring after the auxiliary engine gave out. Consistent pushback against the revolutionary design coerced Can-Am to ban engine-powered ground effect immediately for the next season onward. Though plagued by unreliability, it left a lasting legacy on the motorsport world forever. Race cars are never banned by being conventional.